It's crazy.
Who knows?
I see what you're saying.
That's probably
You know what I mean? Like they like through the internet and stuff.
yeah.
I
It's
see what
gonna
you're
be
saying.
so. That's why we're doing Moses. We're both moving to Buffalo, open up a geriatric clinic, low living costs, working with older patients.
You guys know I started. I hit record already, right?
Oh, really? Uh oh.
Yeah.
Every time.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So I'm gonna try to like tie in a lot of the
Okay.
ideas. Really try to tie in a lot of the ideas that you guys have been learning, and then you guys just feel free to contribute wherever you can. So let me just give you guys a little overview of what we're gonna be doing. Okay. So we're gonna start out. We're gonna start out looking at the spinal cord, right? Right. So we're gonna start off looking at the spinal cord. We're gonna look at like where the spinal cord is derived from, right? So the spinal cord is derived from what? The neural tube, right? So we're gonna see how from the neural tube, we're gonna be able to derive, you know, the spinal the this spinal cord. Then we're gonna then focus in on the different parts of the spinal cord, right? We're gonna look at the central canal, right? Then we're gonna look at the gray matter. So the gray matter is divided, right, into the rected lamina, right? The 10 rected laminas. There's also different like categorization of it with staining. Then once we consider that, we're going to consider the different kinds of neurons inside of the central canal. So there's like 4 major types of neurons that you're going to find inside the central canal, right? Then we're going to move out of the central canal, and then we're going to move into the white matter. Then we're going to talk about the divisions of the white matter, right? So they're divided into like the funiculi. So you have like posterior, anterior, and lateral funiculi, and then the laterals further subdivided into dorsolateral, anterolateral. So we're going to look at that. Then moving on from here, then what we're going to be considering is the hind limb development. So like embryologically, how the hind limb is developed. So you guys remember when we talked about the upper limb, right? And we talked about the structures that form the upper limb, and we're talking about the lateral plate, mesoderm, how it formed the bud, and then we had the parts of the somite, the dermatome and the myotome, and they moved into the limb bud. So basically, we're gonna go into the embryology. We're gonna look at the embryology. Then from the structure, so for example, for the myotome, that's gonna give us the skeletal muscle. Then we're gonna look in at the skeletal muscle, right? So like for example here, right? So then we'll actually take a look at the skeletal muscle, right? So then remember we had the we had the neural tube. Neural tube is gonna give us the spinal cord. Then we had the neural crest cells. So most of your peripheral nervous system is coming from the neural crest cells. Right? Remember the neural crest cells were breaking off of the neural tube, right? So so basically your peripheral nervous system in terms of like the sensory component, and then your autonomic nervous system is coming from the neural crest cells. Now your motor neurons, the somatic nervous system is actually coming from the neural tube. So we're going to consider that, and then we're going to consider like the the innervation, right? So like we have like the innervation of the lower limb. So the motor innervation of your lower limb is coming from the neural tube. Now the glial cells that wraps around it is coming from your neural crest cells, but the motor neurons themselves are derived from the neural tube. Okay, then from there, we're gonna go more onto like the kind of like the molecular level of considering like the muscle unit. So we'll consider the muscle unit. We'll consider the innervation from the cortex through the spinal cord, then to the muscle what is this called, the motor unit, right? Then we're gonna go further into the molecular level, look at the acetylcholines that are being released. Then we talking about like myasthenia gravis, talk about botulinum toxin, going further into like how the calcium is released, the action potential, the end plate potential, those kind of things like that. So that's basically an overview of what we're going to be looking at. Cool? All right, you guys good? So this is just a little overview of what we're looking at. All right, so you guys feel free to chime in. I'm going to try to connect a lot of different ideas as we go along. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. I'm going to be taking diagrams. I'm going to be crossing things out, and I'm asking you guys questions so that you guys are a little bit engaged with this. Okay, so beginning off, so this with the spinal cord. All right, so everybody knows what the spinal cord is, right? So the spinal cord is derived from the neural tube, and I'm pretty sure you guys already know this, right? So this neural tube, what happens is that the cells that form this neural tube, they're going to proliferate, and then they're going to form a lumen, and eventually that lumen will actually become the central canal, right? Within the central canal, you have your cerebrospinal fluid, and the cerebrospinal fluid is the fluid that like bathes, you know, the brain. So it turns out that within that central canal, you can have a complication known as a syringomyelia. All right. So the syringomyelia is basically where you have a cyst that grows within that canal, right? And as the cyst grows within that canal, it causes the canal to get bigger, and then it compresses the neurons, right, inside your spinal cord, and that could lead to like sensory loss and things like that. Okay, so here this is just a depiction. So this is just going back to the embryo. So going back to the embryo. So let me see if you guys can remember. What's this right here? What's this right here?
The top part first.
Yeah.
Median axial.
Ectoderm. It's just ectoderm.
Oh, I thought you were trying to get very.
And I was just saying like the cells here, the cells right here. It's ectoderm, right? Okay, so then underneath the ectoderm, we're gonna have the mesoderm, and then we said there were 3 different types of mesoderms, right? So what are those 3 different types of mesoderms?
You have your lateral.
Okay, lateral plate,
Paraxial.
paraxial.
And,
You guys know this. I know you guys know this. I have confidence in you guys. Okay, so the intermediate.
Lateral, paraxial. What's the third one?
Intermediate mesoderm. Okay, so here it is, right? So we have on the top we have the ectoderm, right? So which is here, right? We have the ectoderm. Then here on the bottom we have the endoderm. You guys remember the endoderm is going to become your gut tube, your future gut tube, right? Now in between the ectoderm and the endoderm we have the mesoderm, and then we say that there's 3 major subdivisions of the mesoderm. We have the paraxial, the intermediate, and the lateral plate mesoderm. Now, the paraxial is also called the somite. The paraxial mesoderm is also called your somite. We'll break up into the somites, right? And now the somites are further subdivided into your sclerotome, your myotome, and your dermatome. All right? This is going to be important because, you know, going back to how the limb is forming, some of these structures are going to be migrating into the limb bud. All right? And then they're going to be giving rise to different structures. Okay, so remember we said this lateral plate mesoderm is split into 2 different groups, right? Okay, so now, so this is our neural tube right here, right? So this neural tube is giving rise to what for us? The spinal cord, okay? So this is the neural tube as we see it right here. This is the neural tube right here, right? This is it right here. All right, so we see the cells and stuff like that. So what happens is that these cells are gonna proliferate, and then they're gonna form a cavity or a lumen. So this is the lumen. All right, these are the cells that have proliferated. Right, so they're gonna form an alar plate and a basal plate. Right, so the cells are gonna proliferate, they're gonna have a cavity inside of them. It's gonna form a cavity, and then we're gonna have the alar plate on top and the basal plate on the bottom. Okay, now the gray matter. Right. So let me see. I put something over here. So over here, this is the gray matter. Okay, you guys, 1 second. This thing is malfunctioned. Let me realize this. Okay, go back. Let's get back here. Okay. So what are we saying here? Okay. So let's look at this. So this is the gray matter. You guys agree? So what's in the gray matter? Cell bodies, right? All right. So here, if we look at this gray matter, what is this called? Dorsal horn, right? And then what's this called? Ventral horn. So in the dorsal horn, what do we find? Sensory neurons.
We got sensory and
Sen-
we got motor.
Exactly. So we have sensory neurons in the dorsal horn, and in the ventral horn we're gonna have motor neurons. So the idea that we're trying to establish here is that when you're looking at this alar plate, so it's gonna give rise to the sensory neurons. Right. The alar plate is gonna give rise to the sensory neurons. Okay. And the basal plate is giving rise to what? The motor neurons. And that makes sense, right? Because this would be dorsal, right?
Wait, I thought that
Yeah.
was the purple stuff around it, the basal plate is just everything moving around it. Or no?
No, I can pull up the lecture for you.
So the alar plate, well, the yellow plate is the bottom one, right? And the basal is on top.
I thought Aron was the most outside of that gave rise to the white matter.
1 second.
Maybe that was better.
I'm gonna pull it up so that you can see it. Second here. Second here slides. Also, I put this in the wrong place. Okay, so here it is.
You've never seen a fat ass man, you.
Should be right. Okay, here it is. All right, so you see it?
So they're pointing to
You guys see it? So this is the alar plate, and this is the basal plate. So the alar plate is going to give rise to your sensory neurons, and the basal plate is going to give rise to your motor neurons. Okay. I managed to get this over. Oh, okay, I see what I did. Okay. Alright, so you guys good? So alar plate is giving rise to sensory neurons, right? Basal plate is giving rise to what? The motor neurons. Okay. Now outside of these plates, we're gonna have the white matter, right? The future white matter, right? And the white matter is what? The white matter is our axons, right? So what happens is that eventually this lumen is going to get smaller, right? And then we're going to have these guys coming together, the alar plate, the basal plate coming together. And then we have this more of a uniform gray matter being formed here, right? Right. Okay. So that's how we're forming the spinal cord. So we already talked about the future gray matter, right? The future gray matter is coming from the alar plate and the basal plate. The future white matter is coming from the area outside of the alar plate and the basal plate.
So I have a question. Is
Yeah.
central canal, I know that's what we CSF?
Yeah.
Is that the only place that contains the CSF?
You know, so okay, so the cerebrospinal fluid like circulates around the brain. So it's not the only place you have it, like in your ventricular system, that goes to your brain. Here,
But I mean throughout the spinal cord.
mm, well, within the spinal cord. So I mean, as you go more distally down, you have more of the spinal fluid in the lower portions of it,
Right.
and that's how you actually do like a
That's when you
spinal
do the
tap.
spinal tap, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys remember, right? So we said in this central canal here, right? We said we can have a cyst forming in here, right? And that cyst is called the what? Syringomyelia. And what happens is that as the cyst forms in here, it causes the canal to increase in size, and then it compresses, right, the neurons. And if it compresses the neurons and stuff like that, then you're gonna have like sensory deficits, stuff like that, sensory deficits, right? Syringomyelia. Here it is right here. Syringomyelia. This is where you have a cyst present in that central canal. It's associated with the Chiari malformation. You guys learn about that later on.
You said it makes the spinal cord swell.
So it's like a cyst. So imagine you have a cyst inside of that central canal. So right here. Imagine you have a cyst inside the central canal right here. Actually, let me give you a better picture.
What is it associated?
This is associated with Chiari malformation. That's basically where you the bone where your cerebellum sits on. It's like it's not formed well. Okay, here this is like your ventricles. Your cerebrospinal fluid actually flows through this ventricular system. You kind of see like it continues with the central canal. So here, right? So if you look here, all right. So this right here is our spinal cord. Right? I'm assuming this is the spinal cord. Yeah, this spinal cord, and this should be the central canal here. Actually, this is a little bit. Okay, I think this probably is the gray matter. It's a little bit hard to kind of tell what's what, but if you look in here, there's the cyst right here, and that's that syringomyelia
Now, is that a
or
problem?
syrinx. No.
This is a fully developed individual? Or
Yep,
this
it's a fully developed person. Yeah. So you can kind of see how the central canal is bigger than normal. Usually, it's very small. That central canal is very tiny. It's very tiny, but because of that cyst actually causes that central canal to dilate. And since it causes it to dilate, you're going to be compressing the neurons, right? That are in the white matter, right? So we said this was our what? Dorsal horn, and this is what? The ventral horn. In the ventral horn we have motor neurons. Now, the ventral horn is derived from what? What plate? What plate gives rise to the basal plate? What plate gives rise to the dorsal horn? Alar plate. Okay. Cool. Okay, so this is how we're forming the spinal cord. Right? This is how the spinal cord is forming. Okay, now, kind of moving along here, going back to the embryology here. So remember, we said that the spinal cord is coming from the neural tube. Right? Now we're going to take a look at the somite, and we're going to be considering what the somite is forming. So we know the somite, it's going to give rise to what? What three structures? And dermatome. Okay. So when we're looking at this sclerotome, dermatome, myotome, all right, we're going to see that there's a relationship between the neural tube, the sclerotome, the myotome, and the dermatome. There's going to be a relationship that we're going to see. All right, and that's going to be with the vertebral column, the muscles, or you can see the back muscles, and like the skin, right? So when we consider the somites again, so we can divide it up into what? The sclerotome, the myotome, and the dermatome. Sclerotome is giving rise to the vertebral column, right, which houses what? Your spinal cord, right? The myotome is giving rise to the muscles. Well, in this case, let's just trying to be a little bit more specific. The muscles, like your back muscles. The dermatome is giving rise to your superficial fascia and your dermis, right?
When you say back muscles, are you referring to the true back muscles or muscle?
Um, yeah.
It's just skeletal muscles.
So,
Yeah, that's what they was pictured up with the.
so what gives rise? What
And the right.
what then gives rise to the true back muscles? Then
The dorsal.
Is it a dorsal? Yeah, I mean there
Dorsal.
are dorsal primary.
you're talking about innervation, or are you talking about
Innovation.
is it innervation, right? But I'm saying what actually forms a muscle.
It comes in the
Yeah.
paraxial.
Paraxial. That's right. Which is part of the somite,
Right.
which is the
Which
myotome.
leads to the myotome, right?
Exactly. Okay. So now, all right. When we're looking at that neural tube, the neural tube is what? Is central, and then we have the somite at the side, and then we just established that the somite has what? The sclerotome, the dermatome, and the myotome, right? So, but what we're considering is that there's a relationship, right, between the neural tube and that paraxial mesoderm, and that relationship is it's what's gonna give rise to the spinal nerves piercing through a certain going through a certain vertebral level. Oh, you got a question? Yeah.
When we look at it, when you have your neural tube, is the one that's immediately next to it is the paraxial?
Exactly. That's right.
Okay, that's okay.
That's exactly what we see here. So this is a neural tube right here. Then immediately adjacent to it is your somite, which is your paraxial mesoderm. And then this somite or your paraxial mesoderm, there's three components to it, right? There's a sclerotome, which we said is going to give rise to what? The vertebral column. Vertebral column is lining the spinal cord, right? And that makes sense, right? It makes sense that if this is right next to it, that the bone that should envelop the neural tube should be right next to it, right? So that makes sense. And then it's going to give rise to the muscles of the back. Then it's going to also give rise to components of the skin. Okay. So now what we're seeing here is that the neural tube is medial. And then we have the somite here. And then we have the components of the somite, the sclerotome, the dermatome, and the myotome. Right? Okay, so what happens is that the neural tube is going to send out neural projections. Right? The neural tube is going to send out neural projections. All right, so you can see it here. So right here you have your neural tube, right? And the neural tube is sending out neural projections. And you can kind of see that this neural projection is piercing through the sclerotome. And we just said that the sclerotome is giving rise to what? The vertebral column, right? So we can kind of see this, maybe this might be one vertebral level, another vertebral level, another vertebral level. And of course the ones on this side, you know, you can imagine this can then become circular, right? And then that's how you're forming the vertebrae that surrounds your spinal cord, right? Okay, then when we're looking at the dermatome and the myotome, so we said that the myotome is giving rise to the muscles, and the dermatome is giving rise to what? Superficial fascia and the dermis. I'm gonna be calling you guys. You guys seem tired, so I'm gonna be calling names. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this, but
Don't worry,
you know.
call us all by our name.
I didn't want to do this, but you know, it has to happen. You know, it has to happen. Okay, so the dermatome, right, is gonna then get innervated by this neural projection, right? So depending on the dermatome that gets innervated, that's how we're getting these dermatomal distributions, because of the neural projections that are coming off of the that neural tube, and then it's going to the appropriate dermatological sections of that somite, and that's how we're getting this sensory innervation, you know, distribution here thing coming along here. You guys see that?
So the
Yeah.
distribution is due to the neural projections coming
Mhm.
from the neural tube.
Coming from the neural tube, moving into these areas. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The neural crest only does exactly what it is?
Okay, so in terms of your motor, the somatic motor innervation, your somatic motor innervation is coming from the neural tube. All right. However, the ganglia, so this is swan cells. The swan cells are coming from the neural crest. The swan cells that wraps, the motor neurons is coming from your neural crest, but the motor neurons themselves are originating from the neural tube, right? And I have this here. Okay, so let's see here. I have this here. Where did I keep this? Did I put it in? Oh, did I put it in? Oh, okay, yeah, I did. Okay, so when you're looking at the nervous tissue, right? You guys remember the neural crest cells are just they're cells that break off from the neural tube and then they move to different areas. It actually gives rise to parts of your adrenal gland. It gives rise to your
Peripheral nervous system.
Yep, it gives rise to your peripheral nervous system.
Yeah, that's Dr. Shaw's favorite.
Yeah, and it also gives rise to your melanocytes in your skin. It gives rise to and also it helps to form like the cranial bones, and also your teeth. But okay, that's out of the scope of what we're looking at. But when we're looking at this neural crest cell, right, it's gonna give rise to your autonomic nervous system, right? Now, so remember the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, right? And specifically, in terms of the autonomic system, we mean like the postganglionic neurons. Postganglionic neurons. The preganglionic neurons are in the lateral horn, right, which is right here. The lateral horn. Yeah, remember the lateral horn, right? So we have dorsal horn, we have ventral horn, we have lateral horn.
That's the one that's on the, yeah.
Mhm. So the lateral horn contains the preganglionic sympathetic neurons. Yeah, this is only for sympathetic. Okay, I got this. This is only for sympathetic. T1, L2 is only for sympathetic. It's not for parasympathetic. This is only for sympathetic.
The neural crest also gives rise to the lateral horn?
Okay, so if it gives rise to the lateral horn, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure that it gives rise to the postganglionic sympathetic, parasympathetic neurons. So, because this is preganglionic. This is preganglionic. This.
It wouldn't be post. If it's at the horn, isn't it pre-ganglionic?
Okay. Let's try to get this loaded. This seems like I'm trying to confuse you guys, but I'm not. Okay, so let's try to get this straightened out a little bit. Okay, let's say this is spinal cord, right? I don't want to confuse you guys. This is pre-gang. Post-gang. And this could be some effector organ. So in this case, my sweat gland. Heart, smooth muscle. Okay, so what we're saying is this, right? For the postganglionic neurons, right? Postganglionic neurons, these guys are coming from the neural crest. Now, I'm not exactly sure about the preganglionic. I don't think that the preganglionic is coming from the neural crest. I don't think so, but I'm not 100% sure of that. But for sure, the postganglionic neurons associated with your autonomic nervous system are coming from neural crest cells. All right, your glial cells that wrap around the axons. The glial cells that wrap around the axons are coming from the neural crest cells as well.
Yeah, that's sure.
Did you guys get that? All right. So for this preganglionic, So the sympathetic, the cell bodies of the preganglionic sympathetic neurons are found in the lateral horn, right? And which is right here. This is the lateral horn right here.
I'm gonna read what you think with the neural crest.
Yeah,
I
go
have it
ahead.
for my outline.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
And one of the things she just, I mean, I don't know if this one, this doesn't answer that question, but on the outline she focused on migrated from the neural crest, migrated from the peripheral nervous system, sensory ganglia, dorsal root ganglia, autonomic ganglia, sympathetic, parasympathetic, both neurons and glia, enteric nervous system, adrenal gland, chromatin cells, and melanocytes. And
Yeah.
she focuses on how neural crest becomes peripheral nervous system, melanocytes, and adrenal medulla.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yeah, but it's hard to
No,
search.
the PowerPoint is like a chart.
Oh, okay. But you can keep going on.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if they specifically say talk about the preganglionic, and that's the thing. They specifically talk about the preganglionic. So I'm not exactly sure where the preganglionic ones are coming from. Okay. So let's try to get through this. Did you guys find what you're looking for? No? Yeah.
Oh,
And then you guys feel free to like if you feel like you want to add something, just feel free to add it. I'm gonna try to connect a lot of ideas together as we go along. Try to connect a lot of ideas as we're going through this. Okay, so we just talked about how these neural projections are coming out, right? Coming out from the neural tube, right? Piercing through the sclerotome, which will give rise to the vertebrae, innervating the myotome and the dermatome, right? So innervating the myotome, which will become what? The skeletal muscle. Giving, then that innervation is going to be general somatic efferent to the skeletal muscle, and it's going to be general somatic afferent to the skin. So general somatic afferent to the skin, general somatic efferent to the skeletal muscle. Okay, so moving on. All right, so we talked about where the spinal cord is derived from, the neural tube. Right, then we talked about the alar basal plate. Then we talked about how the neural tube is leading to the formation of these dermatological layers or sensory layers. Now what we're going to consider is the division of the gray matter. What gave rise to the gray matter? It's a question for you, Dahlia. What gave rise to the gray matter?
Neural tube.
Okay, yeah, it's the neural tube, but what part of the neural tube?
it's the one that's
I
not
told you guys I'm gonna call on you,
Mhm.
but not to again it's okay if you feel free. I mean, like if you don't know, it's okay. We'll move on. We'll ask someone else. Okay.
It's not, remember, isn't it basal, you said? Not alar?
No,
But remember,
I was wrong about that.
We're talking about the gray matter, right? What's giving rise to the gray matter? Because the gray matter is what?
It's alar.
Alar and basal. Because the alar was what? Sensory. Alar was sensory, and sensory was where? Dorsal. Right?
The other one's
So
ventral.
it's both alar and basal.
Exactly. Both alar and basal. Right.
Oh,
Okay. So let's see here. Okay, so Sarah, question for you. What can form inside of that central canal? Okay. What was the name of the cyst? Okay, syringomyelia. Or I think it's called the syrinx, but I think the condition is called syringomyelia. Okay, so
The cyst is just
Syringia.
okay, so moving on from here.
You're right.
We
You're
take
right.
notes.
Syringomyelia is the condition.
Mhm. Okay, so moving on from here, now what we're going to consider is the division of that spinal cord. So how are we dividing up the gray matter? And how are we dividing up the white matter? All right. So the gray matter is going to be divided up into segments. Right. So we looked at how we're getting the spinal cord. what's giving rise to the gray matter, what's giving rise to the white matter. Now we're considering how are we dividing the gray matter and how are we dividing up the white matter. So the gray matter is going to be divided up into segments. Now there's two different ways. You can divide it up according to staining zones, right? Or functional zones, right? So here, this is a little depiction from the slide that was given to you guys in class. So here on the left, these are staining zones. I mean, did I say right or left? Okay. On the left.
It's the right.
No, the left is the staining zones, and the right is the functional zones, right?
You mean, your right?
Yeah, the right of the dye.
So we
Okay, the
say
left
or
here,
right?
left here. I mean, you guys is left.
They're trying to think of it as in.
Oh, you guys are making this too complex. You guys are making this too
Yeah,
complex.
it could be a lot.
Please, you guys are making this a little bit too complex.
Okay, so.
So, just left. You understand what I mean by left? Just on left side.
Well,
This is
I don't think it'll, I don't look at it.
So left is staining and the right is function.
Is the functional zones, exactly. Okay, so so in terms of the staining, here we have the marginal zone. Here is this gelatinous substance, whatever. Nucleus proprius, Clark's nucleus, lateral horn, and then we have lateral motor neurons and medial motor neurons. You guys think you guys can remember this? You guys can remember this? And then on the right side for the functional zone, it's just the Rexed lamina, right? There's 10 Rexed laminas, right? Rexed lamina 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to be considering the Rexed lamina 7 and then the Rexed lamina 9. So here, these are the Rexed lamina 9, right? So the gray matter, meaning the neurons. The gray matter, meaning the neurons, are going to be divided into either staining zones or functional zones, but the one we're going to be mainly considering is the functional zones. All right. So these functional zones are called the Rexed lamina, and there's 10 Rexed laminas. Right. So Rexed lamina 9 contains your motor neurons. Remember that the motor neurons were coming from what? Neural crest or neural tube? Where's it coming from? Neural crest or neural tube? Motor neurons are coming from neural crest or neural tube? Neural tube.
No, the crest is sympathetic.
But there's more.
Sympathetic. The crest is sympathetic. That's right. It's sympathetic and sensory. It's autonomic and sensory. Autonomic and sensory.
But we're dealing with motor.
Yeah, but motors from you.
Motors-
Motor's all neural tube, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I said. Motor is neural tube. Yeah, it's motor. So what do you guys
Also,
what do you guys
neural tube
think?
and neural crest.
Well, the glial cells, the Schwann cells that wraps them, the Schwann cells that wraps them are coming from coming from the neural tube.
Isn't it just neural tube?
What for,
Motor.
like,
Because sensory technically would be both. Can sensory, isn't what Dolly is saying, sensory can be neural tube and neural crest, but motor can only be neural tube? Oh, no, never mind.
Okay.
I'm not following this.
What did you
Okay.
say?
The answer
But
is neural
anyhow.
tube, 'cause motor.
The answer is neural, yeah.
Okay. Motor neurons, neural tube. Okay, motor neurons, neural tube. So these motor neurons, right, and again, Rexed lamina 9, motor neurons.
Here's what I was saying.
Yeah.
But the autonomic nervous system, there's a motor part of it too. Even if it's not the type of motor that we control.
Okay.
So, like, baby burns.
I see what you're saying. That's actually.
That's a neural crest.
I see your point. I see your point. Yeah, but I guess voluntary. I guess this is voluntary. Yeah, this would be voluntary. Yeah, this is voluntary. This is somatic. And not yeah.
Not general visceral thing.
Yeah. Okay, so these motor neurons they're gonna exist in clusters. I'm sure you guys already know this. They exist in clusters, right? They're gonna be divided into what? The medial and your lateral group. Right? The medial more medial than the lateral, right? And then we have the Rexed lamina 7, and these are going to be interneurons that are going to be subserving in the reflex activity, reflex motions. So once again, Rectus lamina 9. All right. This is rectus lamina 7 right here. So rectus lamina 7 is what? Rectus lamina 7 is reflex. Rectus lamina is motor neurons coming from the neurotube. That's right.
Wait, what is sensory called?
The sensory is neurocrest. All right, let's go over this one more time. Okay, so look. Okay, so neurocrest cells, they're gonna give rise to your autonomic nervous system. All right. Don't worry about this. Just don't worry about this. I would specifically say postganglionic. Postganglionic. But just know that they give rise to autonomic nervous system, and they're gonna give rise to the sensory, like sensory innervation. What do we mean by sensory innervation? Like the proprioception, mechanoreceptors, and nociceptors. They're giving rise to the sensory innervation, right? The sensory is not sensory is not autonomic. Sensory is not autonomic. Autonomic is efferent. Autonomic is efferent. So remember, autonomic is your mind is telling your body something. It's not. You're not getting feedback from the world, and then it's going back to your brain.
So neurocrest can do motor?
They can do motor in the sense of the autonomic nervous system. Maybe innervating like your smooth muscles and stuff like that. Your heart and stuff like that. Yeah, you can see it in that sense. Yeah. Yeah, involuntary. Then the neurotube is giving rise to the somatic nervous system, which of course is going to innervate your skeletal muscle, right? Cool. And I'll ask you guys questions, so just kind of drill some of these concepts in, and so you'll get it.
Alright, so somite gives rise to skeletal muscle.
What part of the somite? That's the question. What part of the somite? But go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Dahlia. Sorry.
So what gives rise to smooth muscle?
That's a good. That's a good question. That's a good question. That's actually a pretty good question. I mean, I'm not 100% sure what gives rise to smooth muscle. It might still just be the this is the lateral smooth muscle. Oh, okay. Oh no, that's not. No, wait. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So.
Wouldn't that be more vascular structure?
Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So remember that when you're talking about smooth muscles, you're talking about what? Your intestine. Right. You're talking about your intestine, and where's that coming from? That's coming from what? The endoderm. Endoderm. But I think what happens is that I think it might be I think it's I know what it is. Yeah, it's the splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm. The splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm. You guys remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one that leads to blood vessels and lymph nodes.
Blood vessels, exactly. So the lateral plate, the splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm will actually be. So this guy right here, part of it is going this way. So it's like somatic, and it's like the splanchnic. It's interacting with this guy here, right? And then it's gonna give rise to the muscles of the epithelium of your end, like the gut tube, and that's how you're getting the smooth muscle from. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see if I can explain this a little better. Okay, so what we're saying here is this, right? So we have 3 segments of mesoderms. All right, we have the paraxial mesoderm, we have the intermediate mesoderm, and we have the lateral plate mesoderm. The lateral plate mesoderm can be divided into the somatic and the splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm. The somatic one is moving with the ectoderm, whereas let me draw this out. I don't want to be speaking and then you're not able to make sense of this. Okay, so what we're saying is that the lateral plate mesoderm can be divided into the somatic and the splanchnic. Right? The somatic is following the ectoderm. See, because this is the ectoderm right here, right? And what? This is what? This is our lateral plate mesoderm. A part of it, this part right here will be somatic, and this part here will be splanchnic. So the splanchnic is following the endoderm, right? So what happens is that part of this splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm will associate with the endoderm. So the endoderm will kind of like form, you can kind of see this forming like the epithelium or something like that of the gut tube, because this is going to be your future gut tube, right? Going all the way, it's going to be a future gut tube. And then the splanchnic lateral plate mesoderm will then kind of surround that gut tube, and then it will form that smooth muscle that is associated with the gut tube. Does everyone see that? Yes? No? Maybe? A little bit?
Yep.
All right. So we got that taken care of. Okay. So what we're saying here, we got the gray matter. We're dividing it up into rectsed laminas. Rectsed lamina 7 is what? Reflex. Rectsed lamina 9 is what? Motor neurons. Now we have what? Lateral motor group, and we have medial motor group for rectsed lamina 9. So you have what? You have medial, right? So this is medial, and then you have lateral. Medial. So these guys are rectsed lamina 9, but you have a medial group and you have a lateral group, right? Rectsed lamina 7, reflex. What did we say this was called again? What was this called right here? Ventral horn. What's in the ventral horn? Motor neurons. What's in the dorsal horn? Sensory neurons. What's in the lateral horn? Preganglionic sympathetic neurons. T1, L2. Alright? Okay, now, there is a proximal distal rule and a flexor extensor rule. Alright, all this is saying is that depending on the location of those neurons, depending on the location of those motor neurons that are here at the ventral horn, right? Because the ventral horn is for motor neurons. Depending on the location of the neurons in the ventral horn, then that's going to be telling you what kind of structures are going to be innervating. All right. So your flexor. So if you had a motor neuron around this region right here, they're going to be more so innervating flexors. If you had a motor neuron here, it's going to be extensors. Then over here, trunk, hands. So there is a proximal distal, right? Proximal distal, and then there is the flexor extensor rule. All right. Let me see. I'm trying to see if there's a way. Okay. Yeah. So flexor extensor, trunk, hand. All right. Another thing about these motor neurons. So they're going to be found in groups, right? So we had the lateral group, lateral motor group, and the medial motor group, and they're going to be forming a kind of column, like a column, right? So this is like the lateral motor group and the medial motor group, right? They're forming a kind of column, and this column is spanning about 2 to 3 spinal segments, right? 2 to 3 spinal segments. Okay. Let's try to apply this. Very fast. So what is this called right here? Central canal. What was the malformation that we talked about that can happen in the central canal? Syringomyelia, right? Okay. Also called a cyst. Also called a cyst. Okay, syrinx. Okay. So what is this? I mean, in terms of gray or white, is this gray or white?
Gray.
Okay, so this is gray matter. What is this? White matter. Okay. Okay, now we talked about the division of the gray matter. So how do we divide up the gray matter? I'm talking about like the division, functional divisions. What's the functional division of the gray matter?
The two, one on each side, one with
Okay.
the 10 of them.
Tell me about it, man.
Functional,
Okay, functional and staining. We had the
I was
staining.
gonna say color.
So we had.
Staining on the left and functioning on the right.
Okay. So what do we specifically call the functional groups?
Red X,
Rectsed lamina. Rectsed lamina. How many rectsed laminas do we have?
10.
10 Rexhead laminas.
We learned about 7 and 9.
Okay, 7 and 9. So what's on 7? Reflex. And what's on 9?
Motor.
Okay, terrific. So remember we had the what? If we had one here and then one here.
Those
So-
flexor and extensor.
Okay, wait, let me draw a little bit more here. Okay, so let's just say you're considering these, and then okay, so these here. So what would you call these? If these were Rexhead lamina 9, what would you call these? What would you call them? Okay, so lateral motor group, right? And then what would you call these ones? Medial. Okay. Okay, now let's just say that I'm looking at my trunk muscles. My trunk muscles. If I'm looking at my trunk muscles, I mean my paraspinal muscles, for example. You're looking at my paraspinal muscles, right? Where would the motor neurons be found? Are they going to be found? They're going to be found medially, right? So trunk is going to be over here, and then if I'm looking at like my, muscles that's innervating my, okay, the fingers, yeah, lumbricals. So exactly, they'll be more lateral over here, right? Okay. And then over here, let's say if we were looking at over here compared to over here. So what kind of muscles will the motor neurons around here be innervating as opposed to the ones over here? Okay, flexors. Okay, and then extensors would be more ventral. Yeah, this is not we're just considering the motor ones. Just an example. So 10 Rexhead laminas.
So extensors are more, in comparison to flexors, extensors are more ventral, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Okay, so we talked about yeah.
So you don't divide the reflex ones into medial lateral. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. I don't think there's any division for the. I don't think there's any division for the reflex one. Yeah. Okay, so we looked at the functional divisions of the gray matter, right? Functional divisions of the gray matter. Now, what kind of cells are in that gray matter itself? What kind of cells are we gonna find inside of the gray matter? So some of the neurons that you can find in the gray matter. So you can find motor neurons, right? You can find intrasegmental neurons, propriospinal neurons, and projection neurons. We already know where the motor neurons are, right? Where are the motor neurons? Ventral, Rexhead lamina, right? 9, right? Innervate muscles. You're gonna see them in what clusters, extend 2 to 3 segments, right? Flexors are gonna be more dorsal, extensors more ventral, trunk more medial, limb more distal, right? These are more so neurons that are going to be sending axons to different areas within the spinal cord or up to the brain. So intrasegmental neurons, they're going to be sending axons to like an adjacent spinal segment, right? So they're going to be sending projections within one spinal segment. The propriospinal ones are going to be sending projections to 3 or greater spinal segments, within 3 or greater spinal segments, because you have like different, there's further subdivisions of the propriospinals. I think there's like, what is it like, I forget the subdivisions, but it's like small, is it small? It's like, no, because the propriospinals, they're further divided. Exactly, so short, medium, and what was the other one? Like long. So they're further divided, and then you have the projection neurons. They're going to be sending their axons all the way up to the brain. Right. Quick question for you guys: Where are the cell bodies of your sensory neurons located? Where are the cell bodies of your sensory neurons located? You sure? Okay, I'm talking about the immediate neuron. The immediate neuron, where is the cell body located? the sensory neuron. Where's the cell body located?
Can you repeat
Okay,
the
so
question?
okay, look at this. So let's say, right, I have this is a free nerve ending. Let's say this is a free nerve ending. You know, whatever is coming from my hand or whatever, and then it goes and goes. Where is the location of the first neuron? That first neuron, that first bipolar neuron. Where is this located? Where is the cell body located?
Is it in the periphery?
Yeah, you can see it as being in periphery. Where would it be located? Okay, dorsal root ganglion. Dorsal root ganglion. You guys remember dorsal root
Isn't it
ganglion?
outside of the,
It's outside.
how would it be outside of it? When the cell line, but in gray matter, it would just
So
So,
because
yeah,
sensory
go
is
ahead.
coming from like the outside world, so I guess you would have to have that going there first and then it goes to something.
Okay, let's try to consider this and make this a little bit clearer. Okay, so let's just say here. Here, right? Okay. Let me see how well I can do this. Did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? Maybe something like this. Okay. So let's just say you have a free nerve ending, right? And let's just say this is your nociceptor, the pain receptor. I'm butchering this, but okay, this is like the pain, free nerve ending of the pain receptor, right? So the axon would travel, and then the cell body would be right here, in your dorsal root ganglion, right? And then from here it enters through what? This is your ventral root, right? This, I'm sorry, dorsal. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. So this is your dorsal root. This is your ventral root. All right. Again, remember now we had what? We had the rected lamina, right? Coming in. Now, but in these rected laminas, you know, you're gonna have different neurons. You know, and it could be the I don't know, spinal or whatever, or you have neurons in here that can then go up to the brain. You understand what I'm saying? So, but the first cell body is located in the dorsal root ganglion, and then it synapses in your ventral horn.
Dorsal.
Oh, dang. Oh my god. What am I? Okay, yes, it's dorsal. Dorsal horn. My goodness, what am I saying? Yeah. It's like you're thinking one thing and then like you say the opposite. Okay. Okay,
With
so
the reflex, right? Like you touch something hot or whatever, that's gonna go through the sensory and the dorsal root ganglion, and then it's gonna go to the lamina 7, and then probably
yes, you can kind of see. So maybe it can go to yeah, you can probably see that. It can go to lamina 7, and then that might be an intrasegmental. What did we just see here? So that could possibly be like you can have like intrasegmental interneuron that connects and then synapses onto a motor neuron, and then that shoots out, you know, through the ventral root to a skeletal muscle. You see what I'm saying? Then you get that reflex going on there. Do you guys see that? Yeah? No?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay. All right, so motor neurons, intrasegmental neurons, spinal neurons, projection neurons, right? So we talked about the rected lamina. Now, what we're considering now is a division of the white matter. So, how did we form the white matter to begin with? Question for you, Brandon.
Where are you forming?
Yeah, where's the white matter coming from? The white matter. How did we form it from the?
Well, you have your matter
It's okay. It's okay.
You
Just
have like
do
a
your
bunch of
best, man.
axons in the white matter, right?
Hmm?
You have axons.
Like from what?
What
Where
aspect?
does it
How
come
did we
from?
get white?
How did we get the white
Like
matter?
where?
Yeah.
Like what area? What are you going like?
How do you make
How
the
is it formed?
Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
Okay, so where's the gray matter coming from?
Well, we have your well, you're gonna have it from your neural tube, isn't it?
That's right. But what part of the neural tube?
Well, for your gray matter specifically,
Hmm.
you have your ventral horn, dorsal horn. I mean, would it also be paraxial? It's not lateral. What would be?
Are you on alar basal?
Oh, we're going alar versus basal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my bad.
Yeah.
So how do you
Oh
get
wait,
white
wait. Was that
matter?
confusing you?
No.
Oh, I thought you would be able to tell what I was
But
hinting
how
at.
do you get the white matter?
So the white is just the area outside of
Mm.
that alar and the basal plate,
Mm-hmm.
right? The white is
Outside.
the area outside of that, right?
Is this
So
through the neural tube?
Hmm? Yeah, it's through the neural tube.
that was a trick question. Because you didn't even say how it forms and you said it was this.
I didn't say yeah. You're right. You're right. But I mean, it was there. I mean, you see here, it was here, the area
I
outside
guess
of
the
it.
fact that
That's
it's
why
like
we do-
right
we
outside
do
the
like
AR
that,
and the
like-
base,
Yeah.
we should think that it's coming from like a similar compartment.
Yeah, and you guys can kind of see this all makes sense, right? Because if you consider this, right? So what? This is what? this is the future central canal, right?
Yeah.
Then when we move out a little bit, so this right here, this is your gray matter, right? Then the rest outside is what? White
White
matter.
matter.
So it makes sense.
Which is a bunch of axons, right?
So what's the tag?
So the
what's
yeah,
the tag
axons.
expression if you said what forms it, what is it?
It's just the area outside of the plates.
So it's just formed from what's not made into
plate.
the gray matter.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had the division of the gray matter, which was what? The Rexed lamina. How many Rexed lamina do we have? 10 Rexed lamina, 7 and 9. Now we said that within the gray matter there were 4 major kinds of neurons. So question for you, Dahlia. Can you name any of the 4 major neurons that you can find in the gray matter?
No, like
Like how
motor.
detailed?
Okay, here, right here. So remember, we talked about the subdivision of the gray matter. Now within the gray matter, you can find 4 types of neurons.
Right.
You can find the motor neurons. Notice that motor neurons have their cell bodies directly in that gray matter. Sensory neurons have it in the dorsal root ganglion, which is outside. You see the distinction is a distinction, right?
Yeah.
So you have motor neurons, intrasegmental neurons, corpus spinal, and projection neurons. Right? These guys they're going to be sending information like to either different segments or to like the brain.
So when you say, for instance, intrasegmental within one spinal segment, are you
Yeah.
referring neuron to neuron?
Exactly. So it takes whatever signal it receives, it sends axon up to one spinal segment and then synapses to something else.
So that would be like something going within the cervical region, or
I mean, it can be anywhere, any.
well, for example, what like
Like a
because I thought propriospinal would be like from like cervical to lumbar or something.
Propriospinal is just if it's more than 3 segments. If you're moving more than 3 segments, so maybe like
So that could still be within just one like region of the spinal.
Does that look also
not
the-
one region. I mean,
one
spinal
region?
segments. Like you know how you have L1, L2, L3, like
Mm-hmm.
within 3 or more segments. Like it's,
Segments. Okay.
yeah, like it's sending its axon, like within 3 or more spinal segments.
Okay, so it wouldn't matter. It could be like from L2 to T12, but it's like 3. Well, not that many. More than 3. Whatever.
Exactly, 3 or more.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the white matter we divided up into funiculi.
From C4 to C5.
Gray matter is divided into what? Rexed lamina. White matter is divided into funiculi. Right? So you have
The functional zone of gray matter, right?
not the functional zones, not the functional zone. You can kind of see that's more of
Wasn't that the functional zone? Because then you have the stain zone.
Are you talking about the Rexed lamina, or are you talking about the
So now we're in
No,
white.
no, I'm talking about the gray matter. Because you said gray matter is divided into
funiculi?
the Rex head.
Okay, gray matter is divided into the Rexed. Yeah, that's right.
But I'm saying that would be from the functional side. Right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
The
Hmm.
functional zone.
Yep,
Now
yep,
we're in
yep,
the white.
yep. But now we're looking at the white matter, which are just the axons. Now, the white matter, you can divide them up into funiculi, and you can have posterior. Oh, why does this always happen? Okay, so let's try to establish this first of all. Okay, so white matter. White matter is area outside of the gray matter, right? So it's divided into posterior, lateral, anterior,
Funiculi.
funiculi. Okay, so let's look at it here. Alright, so here. Alright, so here, this is posterior funiculus. This is anterior funiculus, right? So this is anterior, right? This is posterior, right? And then we have lateral funiculus. Then the lateral funiculus is further divided into your dorsolateral, which is just here, and your ventrolateral, which is just here, right here. See that? Gray matter, Rexed lamina, white matter, funiculus, right? Remember, the white matter is just axons. White matter is axons, gray matter is the cell bodies. Cool? Okay, now we can further divide the funiculi into tracts. Right? We can further segment them into tracts. And we have ascending tracts, which are going to be sensory. And it would make sense, right? Because if something is going up, you're trying to feed information to your brain, so it would be sensory, right? And then you have descending tracts, which are going to be motor. And that would make sense because if you're trying to do something, you would have to think about it, and then you send information to get it done. So this is just showing you guys an example here. So in blue you have, these are the ascending tracts. All right. So whenever you have, let's say for example remember this was what was this called? Dorsal root ganglion. What type of what cell bodies are we going to find in here? Sensory cell bodies, right? So we can have a synapse here, right? And then now I could be wrong at how this is going, but maybe it can travel something like that and then go up. So this is another cell body, and it can be a propriospinal neuron, right? And then it can send up. It can maybe projection. Actually, let's use projection. I think that's a better one. So let's say this might be a projection neuron, and then it can send its axon all the way up to the brain. All right. So in blue we have, this is the ascending tract, and then in red here we have the descending tract. The descending tract is for the motor neurons, right? And these are just axons, right? So gray matter, Rexed lamina, white matter, funiculi, and then the funiculi are further divided into tracts.
I think we're all talking about the tracks.
Hmm?
I think we're all talking about the
Yeah, you're probably talking about a dorsal column.
Yeah.
Dorsal column. Okay, so Brandon, quick question for you. It's okay. It's okay if you don't get it right. It's okay. We're trying to get you back. Trying to get you back in the game. We're trying to get you back in the game. It's all good. It's all good.
I'm ready to go.
It's all good. It's all good. So, descending tracts, are they motor or sensory? What do you think?
Descending
Yeah. What do you think they'll be? Motor or?
will most likely be motor because your sensory would want to go up.
Exactly. That's right.
Thanks
Okay.
for giving me that question.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay. So we said that the white matter are divided into what? Funiculi.
Lateral, posterior, and anterior.
Exactly. And then those are further divided into tracts. When then we have ascending tracts and descending tracts. Descending are motor, ascending is sensory. Cool? Alright, so that's that for the divisions. Then going on into arterial supply. So how is the spinal cord getting its blood supply? So it's going to get its blood supply from the vertebral artery. Right? Does anyone know where the vertebral artery is coming from?
Circle of Willis.
Okay, circle of Willis, it feeds into the circle of Willis, but where is the vertebral artery like coming off of? Did you guys already learn about circle of Willis already in this?
Knowledge is dropping knowledge.
Already in this stage? Or you just know too much? You know too much.
That's how they do it in Boston.
I just want to show you guys really fast. But it's actually coming off of the subclavian artery. You guys probably don't. Of course, soon enough you're going to encounter it. But you guys can see here. This is subclavian artery, right? And then like right here, that's the vertebral artery. And then that vertebral, you see it? It's a vertebral artery. Do you guys see? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think I'm. Yeah, it comes off of the subclavian.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is subclavian right here. Okay. Yeah.
So the internal carotid will only give branches off like in the brain.
Yeah. So the internal carotid is feeding into the circle of Willis, and the vertebral is also feeding into the circle of Willis. Right. So okay. So here we go. So right here, this is the vertebral, right? This is the vertebral artery. And where's the vertebral coming off from, Brandon? Where's the vertebral?
Artery? Well, technically, according to Dodd, we might be saying the circle of Willis.
No, this subclavian.
I'm putting circle of Willis.
Subclavian, man. Subclavian. All right, so it's coming off of the subclavian, and then it's feeding into the circle of Willis. All right, it's gonna feed into the circle of Willis. So, but the major thing is this, right? Coming off of that vertebral artery, you're gonna have an anterior spinal artery, and you're gonna have two posterior spinal arteries. Yeah, yeah. Let me see. Is there another picture here? Let's see, there's another picture here that I can. Okay, so we're saying that the vertebral arteries is coming off of the subclavian. It's going to travel through the transverse foramina, and then it's going to feed into the circle of Willis, and that's what we're seeing here. This is the vertebral arteries. They're traveling up and they're feeding into the circle of Willis. But they would be coming off of the subclavian. So if this were the subclavian, if this right here is the subclavian, then that's where the vertebrals are coming off of. And then what's going to happen is that these vertebrals are going to give rise to your anterior spinal and your posterior spinal arteries. And that's what we're seeing here. This is your posterior spinal artery, and this is your anterior spinal artery. Everyone see this? So when we're, yeah, go ahead.
Anterior towards the ventral side?
Yep, anterior towards your ventral side, posterior towards the dorsal side.
That makes sense.
So look at this. So this is the area that is supplied by the posterior spinal arteries. This right here is the area that is supplied by your anterior spinal arteries. So your posterior spinal artery is supplying the posterior funiculus. Alright? Your anterior spinal artery is supplying your anterior funiculus and the lateral funiculus. Right? So if I had damage to Brandon, I'm sorry to pick on you. So if I had damage to my posterior spinal arteries, would I suffer sensory deficits? Would I suffer sensory deficits or motor deficits? Let's say for example there's an infarct, and the infarct was to my posterior spinal arteries. Right? My posterior spinal arteries. If I have damage to my posterior spinal arteries, would you expect a sensory deficit or a motor deficit?
Motor.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
I'm just, dude. I'm trying to get you back, man. I'm trying to get you back.
So,
I'm
so
trying to
the
get you back.
posterior is sensory, but
Huh?
given that,
Huh?
I told you already I was
so
gonna
the
be in the lab
posterior
again.
artery is
I
sensitive,
demand my work.
but given that the anterior covers
Right.
sort of like the ventral region
Yeah.
and the lateral,
The whole class now. This is good.
Mm-hmm.
do you
Yeah.
happen to have problems with your anterior spinal artery, then you
Mhm.
do motor and
Oh,
reflex.
so y'all have memory?
Well, you can see, you can kind of see it that way.
Reflex is kind of so
This is
motor
kind of, you know, kind of a crude, you know, but you can kind of, I guess you can kind of, I wouldn't go as fine as the reflexes, but I guess we can be safe saying about the motor and the sensory, but getting into the reflex is a little bit, you know, you can't really quite tell. Okay, so here, Brandon, did you see it? So,
I'll tell them after.
so if you look at the posterior spinals, not meaning to pick on you or anything.
No, I know.
So, but if you look at the posterior spinals, they're supplying the posterior funiculus, and they're supplying the dorsal horn. Remember, the dorsal horn was where we find sensory, exactly. So we had a damage here, and it'll be sensory, right? Okay, cool. So that's that.
So you said anterior spinal artery goes to the lateral anterior clavicle?
Exactly. Okay. So now going back to the whole embryology, and we'll just cover this really fast. You guys already know this. You guys remember when we talked about the upper limb, right?
Don't they also divide off into pleural arteries and
Oh, medullary.
medullary?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there are medullary arteries. Um, in spinal. Yeah. Let me make sure. Let me. Yeah, let me make sure what it's exactly it's called, so that I don't give you the wrong information here. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you have the medullary arteries. The medullary arteries are actually feeding into. The medullary arteries are feeding into these. Well, let's see. The medullary is feeding. Boom, boom. So it seems like yeah, medullary is feeding into both of them. Yeah, it's feeding into the anterior and posterior. Yeah. So you have the medullary arteries that are also reinforcing the vertebrals. The vertebral is like the main. Okay. All right. So you guys remember about the upper limb, right? You guys remember how the limb bud was formed for the upper limb? Okay, that's right. That's exactly right. So, when we're considering the formation of the lower limb, it's like the same concept, but the only difference is what specifies the location of the lower limb. So, remember we had TBX5, it was specifying the location of the upper limb. So, TBX4 is specifying the location of your lower limb. That's like the only major difference. But you're going to have migration of the parts of the somite. So you're going to have the dermatome and the myotome migrating. You kind of see the same concept. So the dermatome and the myotome migrating into the developing limb bud. And then you have your lateral plate mesoderm also pushing out. And then that's how you're forming that limb bud. Lateral plate mesoderm pushing out, myotome and your dermatome migrating into this area, right? So we already said that the myotome was forming what? What's the myotome giving rise to for us? Muscles, right? So the myotome is giving rise to our muscles. Now the question is, what are these muscles, right? So we're gonna quickly consider look at the muscles of the leg. But maybe we just quickly finish talking about it. So for the dermatome, we already said is the dermis and superficial fascia. The lateral plate mesoderm. You guys remember what the lateral plate mesoderm was forming for us? What was the lateral plate
Lateral
mesoderm?
plate mesoderm, that's for the upper limb. The upper limb would form your bones, the upper limb.
So that was the bones. So it's the same concept, right? So this is going to help us form the bones, right, of the lower limb, right? So considering the bones of the lower limb, right? You guys already know this. So, and you guys feel free to add if you want to point out some things. Feel free to add. Okay, so here we have the femur, right? We have the patella, right? So you guys know the patella is forming from a tendon, right?
Yes.
Then we have the tibia. We have the fibula. Then we have the tarsals, metatarsals, and the phalanges. So these guys are coming from condensation of the lateral plate mesoderm. Right? Condensation of the lateral plate mesoderm. Okay? So that's how we're getting that. Okay, now going to the muscles. Okay, here we go. We're only just going to look at we're only just going to consider the leg compartment. We're not like considering the like above that. You know, we don't have enough time. But I just kind of organize this for you guys. I'm pretty sure you guys already know this. It was going to be a breeze. You guys already know this, right? Yeah. So this is going to be a breeze. Okay, so there are 4 major leg compartments, right? 4 major leg compartments. We have the anterior. So we got the anterior, the lateral, and deep posterior and superficial posterior. Right? And we can see that here. All right. So right here we have what? We have the anterior. Right. We have the lateral. We have the deep posterior, and then we have the superficial posterior. Right. Okay. Now looking at the anterior, what muscles do we have? We have tibialis anterior, right? Extensor hallucis longus, extensor digitorum longus, fibularis tertius. Looking at the lateral, we have peroneus longus, peroneus brevis, and looking at the deep posterior, we're going to have the popliteus, the flexor digitorum longus, the flexor hallucis longus, tibialis posterior. Okay, I'm just going to try to relate some of these to make this a little bit easier for you guys, just maybe memorizing wise. So if you look at the anterior compartment, okay, we have what? This is tibialis anterior. Now if you look at the deep posterior compartment, you have tibialis posterior. So we have tibialis anterior, tibialis posterior, right? Then we have an extensor and then another extensor. But then over here we have a flexor. We have a flexor and then we have another flexor, right? So we have tibialis anterior, then we have tibialis posterior. So this is tibialis anterior, tibialis posterior. We have 2 extensors, and then we have 2 flexors. All right, you guys see that? And then we just have in the lateral compartment, we have the peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis, right? And then moving on to the superficial posterior,
That whole thing is the superficial posterior.
right here, the superficial posterior. Superficial posterior, so just some of the muscles that you're going to see. So we're going to have the gastrocnemius, right? This is the lateral head, this is the medial head, this is the soleus. Just making sure this for completeness. So for the superficial, so you have the gastrocnemius, which we just saw, the soleus, which we just saw, and then we have the plantaris. Right. So just remember for the anterior, you're going to have tibialis anterior, right? Right. For the deep posterior, you're going to have tibialis posterior, right? For the anterior, you're going to have 2 extensors. For the deep posterior, you're going to have 2 flexors, and then you have the popliteus. Whereas for the anterior, you're going to have tibialis anterior, 2 extensors, and then sometimes fibularis tertius, right? Because it's, you see it sometimes, and sometimes you don't see it.
Oh, that was coming out from the extensor digitorum longus, right? On the front, where you see
I'm going to show you, man. I'm showing you. It's right here. see it? See it right there.
That's not part of the, that thing, right?
The what?
The Harris thing,
The who?
something nervous Harris, what's it? What was the thing you said?
Tom, Dick, and Harry?
This is separate, that's not part of the Tom, Dick, and Harry, right?
What is Tom, Dick, and Harry?
Tom, Dick, and Nervous Harris, they remember the houses and the, he
Oh.
actually said that in like.
Are you talking about the anterior compartment?
He was talking about the tendons.
Oh,
the
muscle.
tibialis, the flexor digitorum longus, and the flexor ilicis longus. Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Oh, okay.
This is on the front though, so.
But do you guys see the?
I've never seen the fibrillaris teres.
Did you guys get the connection here with the whole?
Yeah.
Because if you just remember that you're in the anterior compartment, then you have tibialis anterior, right? And then you just have two extensor muscles, and then one of them is going to the big toe, right? Right, and then the other one is going to the digits of the toe. So extensor hallucis and then extensor digitorum longus, right? And then you just remember the fibrillaris tertius is just, you see it sometimes you don't see it. But then when you go to the deep posterior, right, well, you're going to have tibialis posterior, then you're going to have two flexors. You have the flexor hallucis longus, right, flexor hallucis, then flexor digitorum longus. So it's like the same concept, and then another extra muscle. So you have the popliteus, you know, another small muscle, right, popliteus, and then you have the fibrillaris tertius, which is also a small muscle. Yeah, sure. So it's right there. You see it? And that's the popliteus.
Isn't it like right behind your, yeah, that's base, behind your knee?
You see it?
Right behind the pop, it's on top of the pop.
And that makes sense. Yeah, probably so around the popliteal fossa, right? Right. So right around this area here,
Yes,
popliteal. No, it makes sense. Logical. That's how you guys should be thinking about it. Is try to make logical sense out of it. So if you can try to organize, if you organize them by compartments, it becomes easier to memorize everything and what they do. So you're gonna find for the anterior compartment, the anterior compartment is doing your dorsiflexion, right? So the dorsiflexion will be like that, right? And then the plantar flexion is like this, right? At the ankle, and then it's extending the toes. Then the blood vessel for this is your anterior tibial artery, and then the nerve is the deep perineal nerve, right? So the lateral is very simple. So is this perineus longus, perineus brevis, and they're just going to be everting the foot, superficial perineal nerve, and the blood supply is the muscular branches of your perineal artery. Then so we already talked about the muscles of the deep posterior compartment. Now the function is in plantar flexion, right? So plantar flexion like that. And then they're also going to be inverting the foot, right? So moving it towards you, right? The innervation is the tibial nerve. And then the blood supply is your posterior tibial artery. Are you guys good with, so I'm going to quickly go through the arteries with you guys, and I'm going to quickly quiz you guys on the arteries. Well, you guys already know the arteries.
I thought you posted.
You can go with it. Let's go.
I think you have that, you put the other two pictures in, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I did.
those are correct.
So I'll quickly just point it out, and then we'll just talk about. I'll quiz you guys on it really fast. So what were you saying? So what were you saying?
You already posted it on,
I thought
if you have trouble watching the video,
Lateral,
also
the
posted it on Facebook.
plantar flexion, and
For the leg and foot.
eversion.
It probably does. I just put. I mean, I got this from my source. It probably might also do that as well.
The plantar and
William wasn't integrity with them. On Facebook, she posted like
what is invert foot?
Eversion will be like this. Inversion would be like that, moving it towards you, moving it towards you. You see that?
I don't know the word.
Huh?
Tibialis
Okay, so supination was for the hand, right?
It's
The,
for the hand.
the supination was doing this, and then the pronation was doing that.
Or turning the palm, this, so
Oh,
this
Okay, so
inward is invert.
okay. Actually, let me just draw.
You can do that.
Uh,
You can't like.
I can't supinate
It's
the
like
foot.
turning your foot like this, like so
Oh,
your
okay.
the base of your foot is twisting
Yeah,
this
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Okay,
How do you make
let's
your
just
whole
consider
leg
this.
to do that?
Like this. Like
Okay,
this.
Sarah, I got you.
Like this. Right? How about that? Oh no, it's
Same thing. So let's just say this is someone, right? See how their foot is tilted this way, like so. See how, or maybe this is not around here. If you move the foot towards your midline, if you tilt it towards your midline, it's inversion. If you move it out, that'll be eversion.
Isn't there something where you can put the palm or sole of your foot like inside
Or is that,
versus
or am I
outside?
getting it confused? So let me make sure this is right. Okay, so for you guys, the eversion is actually when you actually move the foot out, right? Or is that where you're moving it in the calcaneus? I remember something about the calcaneus.
The
I mean,
sole of your
E,
foot is
E,
shown that way for eversion and then
yeah, E is like this.
Ah, I see.
Like
I
when
see.
you,
Okay,
now,
I'm getting this wrong. Okay,
when
I
you
see.
pronate, your foot pronate out, right? And then
Oh,
this is
okay.
supinating to it, like when you sprain your ankle in one.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah, okay. So it's not. I see your point. I see your point. Okay. Yes, yeah. So the eversion will be when you're tilting it outward, and then the inversion will be when you're tilting it inward. It's almost the same concept, almost, but not quite. But yeah, okay. I see your point.
and the lateral
Which one, sorry?
doesn't lateral also do plantar flexion?
Yeah, there can be other functions. I just got this from the source. Yeah. And like for the popliteus, it's not gonna be doing the inversion and the plantar flexion because it's all the way up there. So it's just a kind of a grouping to kind of help you guys to organize the muscles. You guys see what I'm saying? Yeah. But you're definitely right, and my anatomy is not all that good. So, but I'm just trying to help you guys organize the information and logically just kind of think about this stuff. So you guys good? Good. Okay, so how about we just quickly? Do you guys already know this? I can just quickly quiz you guys on it,
Oh,
and then we can move forward. Or would you guys just rather me finish?
what did you want to review after the argument?
Okay, so the only thing I have left here is just muscles, just information on muscles.
You guys want to go over the muscles?
I don't know history, so you can do everything.
I don't mind doing
Yeah,
everything.
like, you can be others, just briefly go like,
Okay.
the lines of approach to.
Okay.
Or ways you usually handle it.
Did you find did you remember when they gave you guys a fracture worksheet? One thing I've noticed is the lower limb is just very, everyone's dissection is very different. It's not as clear as the other ones. Did you guys have that experience last year? 'Cause I've seen like 5 different bodies, and really only one of them you can see things clearly. The other ones, it's a mess.
Well, I mean, I didn't really have any too general problems. I mean, I don't know. I can't quite say. I mean, I would say I didn't really have too much of a problem, but I mean, yeah, on some bodies, if you don't clean it up well, I mean, it's gonna be hard to
Yeah, I just
identify
see
stuff. You gotta clean up the
4.
body well.
I've only like out of the 5 popliteal vessels, and only one of them has any of the stuff you really be looking for.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Like the geniculate. And,
Yeah, they all look all messed up. When people cut everything.
yeah.
Is the lateral horn the same thing as the intermediolateral cell column? 'Cause it has the
It's not
same,
the same thing.
it has the same numbers, T1 to L2.
I go
Yeah.
for
So the lateral horn is where you have the preganglionic. So the lateral horn. Let's see what I draw this at. I lost it. Okay, I'll draw it again. Okay, so if you look at it, let's just say this is let's say this is the spinal cord, right? You know, let's say this is spinal cord, and this is the gray matter, right? And let's just say this is that little piece there. Let's just say this is the lateral horn. And what do we say we're going to find in the lateral horn?
You also said pre-ganglion. What now were you looking for? Did you ever look that up? When you
Oh,
want?
yeah, it was, chain ganglia and pre-aortic ganglia. Or was it pre?
Okay.
That's the spinal cord, right?
Okay, so within this lateral horn, so T1, L2. So you're gonna have like neurons, right, in different levels. Like you're gonna have these neurons in different levels, right? Now, what happens is that these neurons are gonna send off axons, right? And these axons can synapse depending, on the level that you're on. They'll synapse onto the lateral cell column. So right here. One second. Okay, I don't know what to say. I'm not sure where this will go, but I'm just. Okay, so these guys are the preganglionics. And this is what? This is your lateral cell column, right? These are your postganglionics. These are your postganglionics, sympathetic, not parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is cranial caudal, so it's like cranial, and then like caudal. Your sympathetic is so parasympathetic, cranial caudal, preganglionics. Postganglionics is on the body of the organ for parasympathetic. Sympathetic, preganglionics, lateral cell column. The postganglionics can either be found in the preganglionic in the lateral cell column. So the preganglionics are found in the lateral horn. Postganglionics are found either in the lateral cell column, or you have what are called like the pre-aortic, like ganglions. They can also be found around that region as well. And yeah.
What you're showing on the left, that's on the spine. That's the spinal cord, the left part. So what is the yellow area supposed to represent?
This is the lateral cell column. There's a lateral cell column. This is different from this is completely different from the dorsal root ganglia. It's completely different. You guys should I could Google an image for you guys, but it would take time. But if you guys Google an image, you'll see it. And you guys are gonna see it later on. You'll see it on the body. It's literally right next to the spinal cord. It's like right. It's like
chain.
yeah, the sympathetic chain, also called lateral cell column. Okay, so moving on from here. Okay, so we said we're gonna go over the arteries, right? Okay, so just looking at this right here, so we're starting off with the common iliac artery. Common iliac is coming off of the abdominal aorta, right? Then this common iliac is going to split to your internal iliac, which is running down like so, right? And your external iliac, right? Then your internal iliac is going to give rise to your superior gluteal, right? And then your inferior gluteal arteries, right? And then it'll also give rise to this obturator that's going through this obturator foramen. So what happens is that this common iliac artery, after it crosses like here, it's gonna change to your femoral artery. It's gonna change to your femoral artery around there. Let me change to a different color. So around here, it become like the femoral artery, and then this femoral artery can branch into the deep or superficial femoral artery, and then this deep femoral artery will give rise to the lateral circumflex femoral and your medial circumflex. It's lateral because it's moving like laterally so, and medial because it's moving medially so.
Is femoral coming off the common or internal?
Comes out the
External?
Wait, you said, yeah, for the, so when you're looking at this femoral, is a continuation of this internal iliac. External iliac is a continuation of the external iliac, and it's just a matter of like the landmark, that the name then changes, right? And then you get the deep femoral and the superficial femoral, right? And then from the deep femoral, you're gonna have the lateral circumflex and the medial circumflex, right? And then the deep femoral is going to give rise to these perforating arteries, right? Gives rise to perforating arteries. Then what happens is that this superficial femoral artery is now going to go through the adductor hiatus, and then when it comes out as a popliteal artery, right? So it comes out, and now we're looking at the backside, right? So it comes out as a popliteal artery. And then the popliteal artery is going to give rise to your genicular arteries, the superior and inferior genicular arteries. And then from here, the popliteal is going to change its name to the tibial. So it divides to your anterior tibial and your posterior tibial artery. And then the posterior tibial will give rise to the fibular. Right, and then that just goes on, and then it just ends by itself. And then the posterior tibial will then give rise to the plantar arch, and then the medial plantar artery.
So the figure, what is a figure?
You said where does it end? So I mean,
It just, it doesn't go to like the metatarsals and stuff.
I mean, according to again, my anatomy is not all that great, but according to this diagram, it doesn't seem to go any further. Yeah.
How come you don't see the line?
And then these, that's,
Behind
yeah,
the
oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, you got
Okay,
the
you're right,
anterior
never mind.
posterior, okay.
Where does the superior and inferior tier come off of? The internal?
Internal.
Yeah, it comes off of the internal
Wait,
iliac.
wait,
Yeah.
you have to scoot up it, one thing, or they have it here, because when people draw it out on the, if you look at the whiteboard, they forget to show them shooting up. Most people just act like they're just a regular branch, but you have to show them shooting up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know you look at those boards when we get all confused. The whiteboard.
Okay. So this is right here. This is the anterior tibial. You guys see this? The anterior tibial right here, right? And then it goes on, and then it forms the dorsalis pedis, which actually continues off like this. Then this gives off the arcuate right there, arcuate artery. Cool. All right. One second. Let me manipulate this.
Remember what,
All right. So Dahlia, numero uno, number one.
Common
What
iliac.
common iliac? Does everyone agree? Is this common iliac?
which one, what'd you say?
Number one.
Yeah.
You guys agree that that's common iliac?
Whoa, hold on one second.
Can you guys, this is, okay, so let's, positionally, we're looking at the front view of the leg.
Don't give them any clues.
Because of the patella, remember this patella right there? This is the front
Yeah.
view. This is the obturator foramen, right?
Yeah, that's a common iliac.
Okay. So one is what? Common iliac, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
How is the femoral coming off of external?
Okay, okay.
It's a
Remember,
landmark.
remember this. Okay, so look at this. Okay, so look at this. Okay, so, okay, right here. Okay, so if this is my metacarpal, the name just changes, right? And then like, to my phalange, it's like it's the same artery. It's just that because of where you're at, you're changing the name to femoral.
Oh, so those things are going behind it rather than coming out of it, 5 and 6?
Yeah, those are going behind it. Yeah,
Okay.
those are going behind it. Yeah, yeah. It's like on the side, like on the side of the bone.
I see.
It's this is how you this is
I get it.
subclavian, first rib, axillary artery. It's the same exact thing.
Okay, I see.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it looks like the 5 and 6 are coming out of the external, so I was confused.
Yeah, 5 and 6. Oh no. Oh, okay. I see. I see your point. Oh, okay. Yeah, that is a bit confusing. Okay, yeah. So, Brandon, what's 4?
The obturator artery, whatever you pronounce it.
No, no. What's
Yeah,
from?
it
What's
is. That I know for sure.
Obturator.
Obturator.
obturator? That's right. Obturator. Okay,
So wait, so one is the common iliac
That's right.
artery, right?
That's
Two
right.
is the
So you're gonna go to the internal. So you have your
is the internal.
internal.
superior and inferior gluteal.
And then okay, so Dahlia was 3. I'm gonna just ask you guys.
External.
External what? Okay, external iliac.
Right.
Okay, so Brandon, what's 7?
Well, it's going to be it's the femoral artery
Okay,
because of the landmark.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And then next to it is going to be.
Just wait. Slow down. Let me handle this, man. Let me handle this.
This is the one time I can do these two. I gotta grab this off the still can.
What is the landmark?
Okay, so
I'll tell you later so you don't get confused.
okay, so let's see if we can memorize this today, and then we'll move because we gotta get through this, and then we gotta get through the. I don't want to keep you guys here too long, so let's try to systematically just go through this. I'm just asking you guys numbers. Tell me.
Okay, I'll keep my
All right. No, I'm not trying to. I just want us to try to be a little more effective and efficient. Effective, efficient. So having stuff memorized.
Answer the question you
Oh.
asked.
I know, right?
Okay, so Sarah, what's 5?
Search your superior gluteal.
Okay, Pablo was 6.
Is that the one with, is that the lateral?
Inferior gluteal.
Oh, wait, 5 is superior, 6
Mhm.
is inferior.
And they're all coming off of what?
The
Internal
internal
iliac.
iliac.
Internal iliac. So remember, number 1 is common iliac, branches
Split
off
into internal,
Mhm.
superficial,
internal and external iliac.
external,
Yeah, so this right here will be internal, this here will be external. And then coming off of your internal is your inferior, and then this is superior gluteal.
Mm-hmm.
See that? You guys don't worry if you get it wrong then. We're just trying to see if we can just have it memorized. Okay, so Dahlia was 2.
2 is the internal iliac.
Brandon, what's 1?
common iliac artery.
Pablo was 3.
So that was 2 is internal, 3 is the external.
Sarah was 4.
The obturator.
Okay, Dahlia was 7.
Femoral artery.
Okay, Brandon was 6.
That's the inferior gluteal.
Sarah was 5.
Superior gluteal.
Pablo was 1.
That's a common iliac artery.
Okay. Dahlia was 6.
Your inferior gluteal artery.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Brandon was 8.
Deep femoral.
Okay. Dahlia was 9.
Circumflex femoral.
Okay, circumflex what?
Oh, I just made that up. Anterior circumflex femoral.
Not anterior,
So
not
lateral.
anterior. Lateral.
Lateral.
Do you know why it's lateral though? You know why it would be lateral? Dahlia, do you know why it would be lateral?
I suppose the direction it's going.
Okay, so yeah, so this right here is okay. So
Because it's passing
So, never mind.
laterally first. The
It's
lateral
going to the
circumflex.
outside.
okay, so you see how this is going? It goes like this. Actually, wait, let me get a better pen. It goes like this, and this is moving out laterally, whereas this is gonna go this way and it's gonna move medially.
So they're connected? Medial lateral are one?
Yeah, they're connected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anastomosis.
What?
Okay, Brandon.
An anastomosis. Perforating branches of the femoral artery.
Okay. Okay. Perforating branches of the femoral artery. Okay.
11, right?
Wait, let me see.
That's what she probably put in.
Okay, so what would 12 be? Pablo, do you know what 12 would be?
Well, that's the one that goes through the hiatus. So that's
It's just pointing at the hiatus.
oh, it's just pointing. Okay.
So what is 12 mean?
The hiatus.
Adductor hiatus. Okay, Sarah, what's 9?
The lateral surface bone, other,
That's right.
So then we said 10 was the
medial.
medial circumference.
Medial, yeah, because it'll be. So, okay, so Dahlia, what's 11?
Are your perforating branches of the femoral artery.
Okay, terrific. Brandon, what's 12?
The adductor hiatus.
Okay. Sarah, what's 1?
The common medial tendon.
Okay. Pablo, what's 5?
5
Yep.
is the superior gluteal.
Okay, Dahlia, what's 4?
4 is your oxygenated artery.
Okay, terrific. So now you guys see that we're going backwards now, right? We're going like behind now. This is moving to the backside now. And so, Brandon, what happens 13? What's going on with 13?
The popliteal.
Okay, popliteal. Sarah, what's going on here? What are these branches?
Genicular.
Geniculate. Yep, superior geniculate.
Isn't it?
Superior.
Isn't it lateral
Superior
and
lateral.
medial?
Superior
Superior
lateral.
lateral, superior
Oh yeah, that's
medial.
right. So this would be wrong.
So
This would be wrong.
so that's medial. So
Okay.
15 is medial and that one's lateral.
Yeah, so superior, so this 14 is superior lateral genicular artery. 15 is superior medial genicular artery. Okay, so then what would 16 be then?
Inferior medial genicular artery.
Okay, that's right. And then 17?
Well, 17.
Oh no, sorry, this is wrong. Here.
Yeah, 17 is the inferior lateral.
Okay.
genicular artery.
Exactly. You guys are good. You guys are good. Okay. How about 18 here?
Wait, what's the previous one again?
This right here?
Yeah, 19.
So this is your anterior tibial. Anterior
Okay.
tibial. Anterior tibial.
Right, we're going anterior. Right,
Mhm.
right.
Okay, so Dahlia, what's 14?
14 is your superior lateral genicular artery.
Okay, Brandon was 16.
Inferior medial.
Okay.
Artery.
Sarah was 15.
Superior medial genicular artery.
Okay. So Sarah was 10.
The medial cervical femoral artery.
Okay. Dahlia, what's 11?
And perforating branches of the femoral artery.
Okay, cool. Pablo, you know what 18 is?
Well,
So one is going anterior, the other one's going posterior though.
so we're looking at the back of the legs, so that wouldn't that be
And look at this. What bone is this?
that's the tibia.
Okay. And this is
So
behind
isn't
that
that-
bone.
Yeah, isn't that the tibial
Posterior tibial.
posterior tibial artery?
Because this
sorry.
the one
It's the
here.
back, yeah.
Yeah. So look at that. This is what this would be the anterior tibial, right? Because it's headed towards the tibial and it's anterior. And then the other one is
What's the name of that
Oh no, just kidding.
of the
This-
bone?
this right here?
Anterior tibial
I
artery.
thought you were talking about that.
The
Wait.
hiatus. What's the name of
The
it?
adductor hiatus.
wait, this right here.
That-
You mean this?
Yeah, that's not the adductor.
Well, that becomes the canal. The adductor canal.
You guys know the canal? I actually don't know what this canal right here, right here, right here.
Yeah, abductor is the one above.
It doesn't have a name.
Oh,
No, it
oh
does.
shit.
The popliteal artery.
Well, well, there's the same image he used, so if it's not.
Yeah, we can look at it.
It's fine.
Oh, he didn't.
Yeah, there's no name. There's no name
I
for
don't think
it. There's no
there's
name
a
for it on there. Oh well, at least on this
Never
diagram.
mind.
There's no name for it on this diagram.
So
Oh.
then 18 is the posterior, tibial artery.
That's right. I already had. Okay. So, Dahlia was 20.
The posterior.
Yeah,
third
what?
It's just the.
Remember, the only reason why I would have
Fibular
posterior and
artery.
anterior. The only reason why I would have posterior and anterior is if there's a,
Switch.
if there's like, if there's an artery that correlates with it on the other side. If there's not an artery that correlates with it on the other side, it's still the same thing.
Fibular.
That's right. So that's the fibular artery. Okay.
There's that other name.
Perineal.
Perineal or something?
Perineal.
Yeah, that's right. Never mind.
He probably likes that.
Stick to it.
Okay. So 21. Does anyone know what 21 is?
Isn't that the plan?
Is that your lateral plantar?
Okay.
Lateral plan?
Lateral plantar. 22.
Medial
Medial
plantar.
plantar.
Okay. 23. Plantar arch.
Oh.
Plantar arch. Plantar arch. Okay, I'm just gonna do this randomly now.
Plantar arch artery.
Mm-hmm. Plantar arch artery.
So what's
Okay, so I'm gonna go. Okay, Pablo 13. What's 13?
where is 13? Isn't that the
So sort of P.
yeah, that's
Oh, you have a mnemonic for it?
no.
Oh,
Papillon, something on it.
popliteal.
Popliteal, yeah.
Yeah. So popliteal artery
I tried to come up with a mnemonic, but
didn't work.
What's the popliteal fossa area, right?
yeah, that's a pop. It is a
Yeah.
popliteal artery.
Yeah, it's popliteal.
I just didn't. I knew it was with P.
Okay, Brandon 23.
Oh, plantaris arch.
Not plantar. Plantar. Plantar.
Sorry, plantar arch.
Okay, Dahlia 21.
Plantar sounds better than
Okay.
plantar.
I feel you. Okay, Dahlia 21.
21 is the lateral plantar artery.
Okay. Sarah 22.
Medial plantar.
Okay. Brandon 18.
So, let's see, no, posterior tubular artery.
Posterior tibial.
What is it? Tibular.
Dahlia 19.
19 is the anterior tubular artery.
Okay, terrific. Pablo 2.
That would be. So we have a common iliac artery on
Yep.
one, so then that would be our posterior. Sorry, internal iliac artery.
That's right. Okay, Sarah 6.
Inferior gluteus.
Okay, terrific. All right. I just wanted you guys to. Oh, we didn't finish these last ones. We didn't talk about these last ones. Okay, I'll just point these ones out. Okay, so right here, this is your anterior tibial. And that makes sense, right? Because it went around, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's anterior tibial. Then here, dorsalis pedis. Then over here is your arcuate.
Your what?
Arcuate. So this is the
Arteries?
this is the
That's the arch,
Pla-
and that's the arch.
That's a plantar arch.
yeah plantar arch.
Medial.
It's arcuate. Yeah, this is arcuate.
And that one.
Arcuate. All right, so that's that for the arteries. We kind of looked at the muscles. Okay, so because I don't want to keep you guys here too long, so we're gonna quickly just look at the nerves. We're not really gonna like do the little quiz thing. Okay, but here, so we have an obturator nerve.
I like the quiz. The quiz was fun.
Obturator nerve. That's if you guys don't mind. I've been realizing that I've been keeping you guys here too long, and
I didn't know any of those
Oh,
arteries
dude, this is the
before.
best way to
It's
spend a Saturday.
Saturday.
okay.
I mean,
I'm just making sure. I don't want to be committing any
most people don't
crimes.
come out on Saturday, but they come for you.
I think Moses has stuff to do. He doesn't.
And Moses,
No.
yeah, where's Moses' cell phone? He's been getting these text messages. I know you have a test on Wednesday, Moses. You can see me right now.
Okay, cool. Okay, so how about we finish the muscles, and then we just come back to it.
Okay.
We'll come back to the whole
What are you
shebang.
referring to muscles? With the neuromuscular junction or?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about the muscles of the legs and stuff like that, but now we're actually gonna get into like the more of like the molecular level
Oh, right.
sarcomeres and all that good stuff.
But the lecture's on Tuesday.
The discussion on Tuesday.
Okay, so you guys remember where is the motor neurons? Okay, Brandon, question for you. Where are the motor neurons derived from?
Ventral. Ventral, it's in the ventral horn, and technically there's motor, everything we're talking about. Oh, this is when you want to
Where's
go
it
for
derived from?
alveolar versus basal.
Okay, no, I'm talking. Okay, so is it coming? Okay, so is it coming from the neural tube,
No.
or is it coming from neural crest?
It's coming from the neural tube.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, neural crest is your autonomic.
Okay,
T gang, something else
But
that is.
autonomic is mine, so that doesn't make sense.
autonomic is.
Yeah, but
Okay, I see. Okay, I see. I see.
No,
I'm getting in trouble here. Okay, I meant skeletal muscle.
If you look at his
Yeah,
PowerPoint,
okay, I meant skeletal muscle.
he always goes autonomic right under
But
what
your reasoning for it being that isn't right.
No, I would have said sympathetic, but according to his one note text, I remember right after he puts autonomic under the thing.
Well,
Accurate
autonomic
according to
is
his
motor,
lecture.
so I'm saying we
It
should
has
have
both.
that.
Yeah, I see. I see where you guys are going. But
I
okay,
would
so
reference Moses' lecture.
but just okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so just think. Okay, so for the motor neuron, I'm talking about somatic nervous system. I'm talking about the neurons that are synapsing onto the skeletal muscle. Neurons synapsing onto skeletal muscle.
Okay.
Right. So coming from neural tube. Right. Okay, so now the thing is, where does the information originate? Because we know it's going to be efferent. It's going to be like, it's going to be efferent, meaning is traveling down. So the axons are going to be traveling down the spinal cord. So if the axons are traveling down, where's it going to be found? Where are those axons going to be found? It's traveling down the spinal cord. Where's it going to be found? Those axons. White matter. That's right. And what kind of tract is it? It's descending tract, right? Remember?
Which is motor.
Okay,
No.
that's right.
Yeah,
Descending tract is
descending
motor. Ascending is sensory.
Ascending is sensory.
That's right. So
You mind me asking, with the white matter, what were you trying to get at?
axons,
Oh.
white matter, axons. Okay, so but the major thing is this, right? So when you're looking at motor information, right? That motor information is going to originate from the neurons of your motor cortex in your brain. The neurons of the motor cortex of your brain are then going to send their axons down, right? Through the descending tract, which is part of the white matter spinal cord, right? Then they're going to synapse onto where? They're going to synapse onto the Rexed lamina 9, because that's where the motor neurons were found, right? So we have motor neurons in the motor cortex in your brain. They send their axon projections down through your spinal cord through the descending tracts, which is in the white matter, which are then going to synapse onto your Rexed lamina 9. And we said there were two groups of these Rexed lamina, right? There were the medial and lateral.
Oh, yes.
So which ones are for trunk muscles? Which ones are for your limb muscles? Lateral. Which ones are for your flexors? The ones that are more dorsal, right? Which ones are for your extensors? The ones that are more ventral, right? So once the synapse is onto the Rexed lamina, then that neuron in the Rexed lamina is then going to give off its axon, and that axon is going to travel through the ventral, your ventral root. Let's go back here. Where is it? Okay, so here. So the neuron would be here, right? So now we're assuming that this is a descending. So let's say maybe I'm not 100% sure how this would go, but let's just say this is the descending tract. I'm not sure if this is not technically right in the way, because you guys are going to learn about the tracks and how they move later on. But the idea is that you're going to have the axon coming from the motor cortex synapsing onto Rexed lamina, 9, right? So now this guy here is then going to send off its axon through the ventral, this is right. Ventral root. It goes through the ventral root, then it goes through the spinal nerve, right? This region here is called the spinal nerve, right? Now, this is the thing, right? It could either go like this or like this. Now, this here is your dorsal primary rami, and this is your ventral primary rami. All right, you guys know the difference?
Yes.
What's the ventral primary rami? I mean, sorry, what's the dorsal primary rami? I meant to ask. What's the dorsal primary rami?
It's like the sensory and motor in the back.
Exactly, sensory motor to the muscles, the back muscles, skin and back muscles, right? Ventral primary rami is like other stuff, right? So now this can move and then go on, and it can now synapse onto what the skeletal muscle, right? And then cause it to move and stuff like that. So that's what I was trying to get at here, right? So we have the neuron in the motor cortex, sends axons down through the descending tract, synapse, rectus, lamina 9, sends axon through the ventral root, goes through the spinal, nerve, then goes through the ventral primary rami, and then synapses at the muscle. Now it turns out that one neuron is actually going to synapse to multiple muscle cells or multiple muscle fibers, and collectively those muscle fibers is called a motor unit. All right, the muscle fibers, meaning muscle cells that are innervated by one motor neuron, are called a motor unit, right? And that's what we're seeing here. So this is like a motor unit, right? So you have all these muscle cells, right? And these muscle cells are they're being innervated, right? And this innervation is coming from one, motor neuron, right? Or motor neuron. You guys see that? So this would be like a motor unit, right? It's a motor unit. You guys see that? Okay. Okay, so then if we zoom in on one of these synapses, right? So this motor end plate. So here we have the axon, right, synapsing onto the sarcolemma of the muscle, right? So the sarcolemma is basically the covering of the muscle, right? It's like the plasma membrane of the muscle, right? So skeletal muscle is how many nuclei? Does it have multiple nuclei, or is it striated or non-striated? Striated, right? Skeletal muscle striated. Skeletal, cardiac, or striated, right? So yeah, so striated. How many? What's the number of nucleuses or nuclei that you will find in the multinucleated, right? Okay. And where's the location of the peripheral, right? Okay, so you have the synapse, you have this synapse here, this motor end plate right here. So the action potential travels down, right? Then what happens is that the voltage gated calcium channels, right, gets activated. Calcium comes in, then it leads to what? The fusion of the vesicles containing acetylcholine, right? Right? It leads to the fusion of them at the synaptic, at this area right here, right? So you get the fusion, and then you get the release of the acetylcholine, right? You guys remember the things that are involved in the fusion of the vesicles with this membrane right here? What, exactly. So the snare proteins.
Oh yeah, the B snares and C snares.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it turns out that botulinum toxin actually cleaves the snare proteins. So botulinum toxin will cleave the snare proteins, and it will prevent the fusion of these vesicles with this terminal membrane here. So you're not going to get a release of the acetylcholine. So you're not going to be able to elicit a contraction because you're not getting any fusion of those acetylcholine vesicles, right? At this terminal membrane here, right? So this is also Botox, right? This is how the concept of the Botox works, right? So botulinum toxin inhibits the snare, well, it cleaves the snare proteins.
Technically the opposite of botulism, right?
Tetanotoxin, tetanotoxin. So basically, what that does is that it inhibits the rancha neurons, which are the ones that are producing the GABA and the glycine, and those are inhibitory. They're inhibitory signals. So if you're
Like constant.
yeah, so if you're inhibiting, if you're preventing something that normally prevents, then what you have is a lot of stimulation, and so you get like rigid. So it's like you get tetany.
Okay.
It's like a whole bunch of because tetany is like like the contraction is like constant,
Yes.
so you don't have any inhibition.
So technically has nothing to do with acetylcholine then.
No, technically
Yeah.
It's just that random.
and then it was C. Forgot. What's another?
Acetylcholinesterase, what?
No, we didn't have it.
Okay. So once the acetylcholine binds, once the acetylcholine is released, then the acetylcholine is going to act on the nicotinic receptors, the ligand-gated acetylcholine receptors, and it's going to cause the influx. Once it opens, it causes the influx of sodium and the efflux of potassium. This is electric. So you get an influx of sodium and efflux of potassium. So it turns out that there's more sodium is rushing in than potassium leaving out. So you get a net kind of like depolarization. And this is called the end plate potential. Right? So if that end plate potential crosses threshold, then you're going to elicit an action potential. But if it doesn't cross the threshold, then you won't elicit an action potential. So right here, so this is like this is an end plate potential that is sub-threshold. So it didn't actually cross like the threshold. So because it didn't cross the threshold, then you don't actually elicit an action potential. But if that end plate potential actually crosses, so if it crosses the threshold potential, the threshold, then you would actually elicit an action potential, and that action potential is going to be propagated, right? So the action potential is being propagated by your voltage-gated sodium and potassium channels, right? So you guys already know, right? Sodium is responsible for what? What phase of the action potential? Depolarization. And then our repolarization is for what? Potassium is doing the repolarization. So this action potential, so once the acetylcholine is released into the synaptic or the neuromuscular junction, then it's going to act on these ligand-gated acetylcholine channels, nicotinic channels. They're going to open. You get this influx of sodium. You get this end plate potential being generated. If it's above threshold, then you're going to elicit an action potential. The action potential will then travel, right, down the T tubules. It will travel across the sarcolemma down the T tubules, right? So this is T tubules. And once it travels down these T tubules, it's going to affect these ryanodine receptors, right? It's going to lead to the opening of the ryanodine receptors. And once the ryanodine receptors opens, it's going to release calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And this is just showing you that here. So right here. So there's a T tubule. The action potential will be propagated down like so. And once it's propagated down, it's going to activate this dihydropyridine receptor, which is then going to adjust. So it's going to shift a little bit here, and then it's going to open up this ryanodine receptor, and this ryanodine receptor is actually, so this is your sarcoplasmic reticulum. So you guys know the sarcoplasmic reticulum has what? What does sarcoplasmic reticulum have? Calcium, right? Sarcoplasmic reticulum has calcium. So the ryanodine receptor is on the surface of that sarcoplasmic reticulum, but then it's associated with the dihydropyridine receptor. As the action potential travels down the T tubule, it activates this guy, and then it causes this guy to shift like so. And then this guy causes the ryanodine receptor to shift open, and then calcium flows out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, right? So what do you think is going to happen with the calcium now? That's right. So then it binds to troponin, right? And then troponin is then going to cause the myosin binding sites to be exposed, and then the myosin head are going to bind, and then you're going to get your power stroke. I'm sure you guys already know this, right? This is pretty okay. But let me see if I can show you guys something you might not know. Okay, so when you're looking at the myosin, actually, okay. So when you're looking at the actin, right? So structurally, you're gonna have like monomeric units for your actin, and these are called your G actin, right? So the G actin are the monomeric units of the actin. So when the G actins come together like so maybe like something like this, they form the F actin, right? So the G actin is the monomeric unit. So if you were to take one of these, that's your G actin. But if you put them together, then it becomes your F actin, right? So now, so it turns out that, okay, from her lecture, she says that tropomyosin, so this guy right here, right? So she says that the tropomyosin is associated with the F actin, which kind of makes sense, right? Because it's associated with the more of the linear form. And then she says that the troponin is associated with the G actin, so meaning the monomeric subunit. You see that? So that was on the slide. I thought that was important to point out. And another thing is that, so you guys heard of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, right?
Yes.
So it's an X-linked recessive mutation in the dystrophin gene. So basically, dystrophin is basically a protein that helps to anchor the actin onto the sarcolemma, right? So dystrophin helps to anchor the actin onto the sarcolemma. I thought that was also important to point out. Let's see if there's anything else. Then maybe some other final things. Okay, so how do we generate a stronger contraction? You guys? Okay, more calcium influx. More calcium influx. Okay, more myofibrils. Okay, more action potential as well. More motor unit. Yeah, this is just a depiction of how you can elicit a stronger contraction. So depending on how strong that end plate potential is, right? So it can be sub-threshold, it can be threshold, it can even be above threshold. Depending on how strong that stimulus is, you will recruit more muscle fibers in that motor unit. So as the strength of the stimulus increases, so also the amount of muscle fibers in that motor unit that you're going to be recruiting with that contraction. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, so what I'm saying is that, so we know that one motor neuron is going to synapse onto multiple muscle fibers, right? So because because it is synapsing onto multiple muscle fibers, right? Then okay, because it's synapsing to these multiple muscle fibers, then there's potentially I guess, I mean, you can cause one of the muscle cells to contract, or you can cause a couple, or you can cause a little bit more to contract. So the amount of muscle fibers that are going to be contracting is going to be dependent on that end plate potential stimulus. So this end plate potential stimulus right here. So depending on the strength of it, then you can recruit more. Does that kind of make sense? That's coming. So the strength of the signal is going to determine how many of the muscle fibers that you're going to be recruiting, and then that's going to be determining the strength of the contraction. And then this is just the sarcomere, which you guys already know about. This is the M line, right? Z line, the H line, the A band, the I band, and then the H band. Okay, so the H band and the I band. Actually, no, wait. Let me make sure this is accurate. Okay, so yeah. Okay, yeah. So H band and the I band, these guys are not going to change in size. Sorry, they change in size. Right. So your H band and your I band are going to be changing in size, whereas the A band is not going to be changing in size. Right. And another thing that I think was important to point out. So going from Z, the Z line right here, to the Z line right here, there's a protein that stabilizes the sarcomere, and it's called the titin. So it goes from Z, the Z line to the Z line. It's called titin. Yeah, go ahead. Is it from the myosin to the Z line? So from here, right here? That's not what I saw in the lecture, but I can check. Okay, hold on. Yeah, so okay.
So it's going all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah, so it goes all the way. Yeah. So so it goes from Z line to Z line, but okay, so it goes through the myosin. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then this is the last thing. So the last thing that I think is important to point out to you guys is the speed of the twitch. So when you elicit that contraction, so you get the twitch, right? The speed of the twitch is determined by the rate at which the myosin head hydrolyzes ATP. Right? The speed of the muscle twitch is determined by the rate the myosin head is hydrolyzing the ATP. So if the myosin head is hydrolyzing the ATP relatively fast, then you're going to be more of a fast twitch fiber. And if the myosin head is hydrolyzing the ATP slower, then you're going to be more of a slower twitch fiber, right? So for your ocular muscle, you're more of a faster twitch than your gastrocnemius, than your soleus. Right? Cool?
So this is the slowest, right?
Yep. Okay, so really fast. I'm gonna ask you guys a couple questions. You guys are paying attention, right?
Repeat last one you said about ocular and then gastrocnemius and what you said after that?
Okay, so essentially, so the ocular muscle is it's the fastest when you're considering the gastrocnemius and the soleus, because it's going to be the myosin heads are going to be hydrolyzing ATP faster.
that would determine
The speed of the twitch.
the twitch.
The speed of the twitch, yeah.
Just the speed, not the strength, right?
Yeah, the speed.
You guys finish your medicine assignments?
I'm about to go take your picture.
Yeah, I gotta go. Thank you, Moses.
Yeah, no problem.
Really appreciate it.
You said you'll be here till late, right?
Yeah, text me when you arrive. I'll be here till about late.
Do you have to go back to the barn?
I'm doing it tomorrow. On Sunday morning.
That's what you said you were doing tomorrow.
I don't think I have Taylor today.
Okay.
I know Taylor's doing her thing. I don't know if you talked to her about that.
What do we have at A?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Z lines, right? These are the Z lines, right? So Brandon, what would be C? What is this? What's this right here? Okay, that's the H. Okay, so how about B? Dolly, you know what B is? What's this line right here? What's that line? M line. So the middle line. The middle line. So the middle and then the Z's is the end. Z, last letter of the alphabet. So end lines and then the middle for the M. So what would D then be? Brandon, you know what D would be?
So you're saying
So Z, right here. So the Z lines are at the edge, right? Okay, so the letters don't correspond with what it is.
that was
Yeah.
no
So
okay.
It's just I'm not. It's
You have
just
E, you have your A and
the A is the Z lines. A are the Z lines.
the A and I.
Using D, A band.
D is I.
Okay.
D is
Yeah.
and
D is I,
D is
I,
A
A,
band.
I.
Okay, so D is the A band, and then the E is the I band. So when we do contract, which one is not going to change?
A.
Okay.
H.
A band doesn't change.
H, not H, A.
A band. This one right here.
Oh, remember they asked that trick question on the test though?
What?
Wasn't that tricky though, I guess, never mind. But they were trying to ask something because about with Z and the way they worded Z, it was implying whether it changed or didn't change.
No. The only ones that change is A band.
How is Z changing?
No, but they're trying to they worded it in a way where they weren't talking about
Right?
whatever.
You said why would Z change, or is it why would it
Yeah,
not?
the Z is just the line.
It's a
It's
reference
not
point.
changing anything.
You're probably thinking about.
I mean, maybe the muscle is short. The muscle is shortened.
The Z
I mean, it is a-
itself is still just a line. A line.
It's a
Like,
reference
it's not
point.
it's not from a point. It's just a line.
I mean, but the muscle shrinks though.
But if the muscle shrinks.
The muscle
Z will
shrinks,
change.
How is
then
Z changing?
because it shrinks.
Yeah.
If the muscle is gonna,
muscle
The length is
It's
just
just
the
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 length
line.
doesn't
just think.
change.
Okay, if the muscle,
It's
if
the,
the,
it's the location.
It-
It's still the same
Okay,
reference.
it's delocated, but it
But a
doesn't
line
change
is
the
not
length.
from point to point. A line is just a line. So
but think about it. Think about this, all right? Think about this, right? If when you contract, the muscle
Do it,
shortens.
Moses.
No, but if when you contract, the muscle
It's
shortens.
like this, right?
Yeah, so then the sarcomere has to get shorter.
But the
Yeah,
Z
but-
But the Z
line
line
is
itself,
still
the
the Z
length doesn't
line.
change.
Yeah, but it does because if
No,
it goes from here to here, then it did.
This was the question on our test. The length doesn't change, but it
You
shifts.
see what I mean? It shifts, yeah.
I said it doesn't
Yeah,
change.
delocated. Like it's dislocated or whatever.
Whatever.
That's it.
But the Z line
No, but
itself
remember,
does
look, it
not
was
change.
right here. It was right. Okay,
Right.
it was right here. Now it's over here.
The length of it doesn't change.
The length of it changes.
Okay, the
No.
distance
No,
between
that's
Z
Moses.
lines
No, no,
changes,
no.
right?
No,
The
no, no, no.
distance between Z
Well,
lines.
Moses and I were-
Distance between two Z line changes, but the Z line and individual Z
Doesn't
line does
actually
not
change.
change.
No, but what Moses was saying is,
The what and the
if the
what?
actual size of the muscle changes,
But is that the Z line?
the Z line will
Then
change.
everything's gonna
Change
change.
length? No, it doesn't.
Not
The
change
distance
length.
Why would the Z line not change though?
If the actual.
No,
It's
like
a
the
reference point
distance
between the
between the
two.
two change, but we're saying like the physical Z line itself, like it's not gonna lengthen or shorten.
It just shifts with the movement.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. How long it is?
I do like the idea though, you both being proved wrong. He's putting this up on
We
YouTube.
weren't proved
He's
wrong.
gonna be like,
We weren't proved
Immortal.
wrong.
no.
I think
Now understand.
each,
Exactly.
he was they,
They
there
were
are
talking
two
about
different questions.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
two different
exactly.
things.
Okay. So
Thank you again, Moses.
okay. What do you guys want to? Do you guys want to leave because you know,
I
I
have
mean,
a question, about the link tension relationship. I
yeah,
don't have the slide for it.
yeah,
If
I
you
can
know
pull
what
it
it
up.
is.
I can pull it up. It's fine.
I think it's slide 38. Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Hmm?
Yeah. So what about it?
Like, can you explain it?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So okay. So just looking at this. Okay. So okay. So let's see here. So this is the tension for set maxing. So this is the amount of force we're generating, right? So the amount of force we're generating is going to be proportional to the amount of cross bridging, right? So the amount of myosin heads that can actually bind to actin. All right. So when you're over here, you're getting so like over here, right here, you have some cross bridging here, but because of this, there's too much of an overlap here. So this is not like an effective overlap. All right. So when you're looking at like over here, you have how would I say this? So I guess let me see. Hopefully the best. Hmm. Let's explain this in the same. And this actually doesn't make sense because of this over here. This is too far away. Okay. Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So you have to. Okay. I guess the way you want to see it is that you have to consider number one. You have to consider the amount of cross bridging, and then at the same time, how far you can pull the muscle. Because if the muscle is already pulled all the way in, you can't really pull it any further. So number one, you have to consider. So you have to first of all consider the amount of um, myosin heads that can bind to actin, and then you also have to consider the the distance. So because see, like if you're looking over here, you see right here, right? See how far these actin are from each other. If the myosin contract and pulls it, then the muscle can like shorten, right? Then if you look over here, this here can shorten even. This can shorten more than this because it's further away, right? But the thing about this and this is that this is like the best case scenario of where like the myosin heads can bind onto the actin and then where you can shorten the best. So it's like you're looking at like the myosin heads binding to the actin, and then you're also looking at your ability to shorten, because the ability to shorten is going to determine how well of a contraction you're going to generate. So it's basically showing. This is basically showing. Um, it's basically showing the cross bridging and the I guess the distance between the actin and the position at which you can best generate the most forceful contraction. That's the way I always see this. So like if it's too far away, like over here, so this right here will be an example of where you don't have any, you can't really produce cross bridging, right? You can't really produce any cross bridging. But the thing is that the actin are maximally spread apart. But the problem here is that you can't really produce any cross bridging. But then over here, it's like, okay, you're coming closer, but you're getting a little bit more cross bridging. And then over here, it's like, okay, you're getting the best amount of cross bridging, and the actin they're at a good distance. They're like a good distance from each other. And then here is like, okay, you're getting too much cross bridging, but they're too close together. And then here it's like they're way too close together, and even though you're able to get a lot of cross bridging.